And we're live.
Hey, hi everybody. We're gonna let people kind of trickle in, but before we get started, I'm gonna pass it over to Eamon, who is gonna kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Every event we have, every conversation we have, whether it's public facing or internal, we think it's really important to do a land acknowledgement. And we know that there's a lot of opinions around land acknowledgements and how a lot of Indigenous communities and BIPOC communities feel like they're performative and that, what do they actually accomplish in the grander scheme? But for us, it's about intention, and it's about kind of acknowledging that, the four of us, we are settlers on stolen land. And I think, for us, it's really just the starting point. And in addition to this, in our personal lives, in our daily lives, we try to have critical conversations about the land we're on and what that means and what our role is as settlers, what our role is as allies. And I think, that's kind of the place that we're coming from. I am located in Mississauga, so the land acknowledgement I'll be reading is for this land. I'm just going to get started. We would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and which the region of Peel operates is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land, and many still continue to do so. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and we thank and respect the original owners and inhabitants of this land. And so I think it's really important, even in this conversation, as we go on, to keep this fact in mind, and to navigate our conversations knowing we have that privilege and that we are, in fact, settlers on stolen land.
Thank you, Eamon. So we're gonna go around and do quick intros for each of ourselves. So I'll start. My name is Hannah. I am one of the co-founders of BIPOC of Pub. I work in foreign rights at a literary agency. I'm also a writer. I'm a booktuber. I don't know. And yeah, I think that sums me up. So who wants to go next?
I can go. So hi, everybody. I'm Paige. I'm another co-founder. I work in social media and content creation, kind of, for publishing. I am also a booktuber and basically just everywhere on the internet at all times talking about books.
I will go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Marina, pronounced she, her. Also one of the co-founders. I work in publishing on the audiobook production side. And then on a freelance basis, I do a little bit of translation. And yeah.
Hi, as everyone heard, my name is Eamon. I am also a part of this beautiful family. And I am an editor at a publishing company located in Toronto.
Thanks, everybody. So before we get started, we just wanted to give a quick intro for what this event is going to be and just a little bit about where we're coming from. As the co-founders of this collective, we spend quite a lot of time thinking and talking amongst ourselves about the state of the industry. We've done that before we founded the collective, and that was kind of how we got here, to be honest. And we talk about all the things that we've experienced, all the things that we've witnessed, things that other people have shared with us. And usually we articulate some of those thoughts and opinions and just experiences in our newsletters, in our tweets. And we try to be very careful and honest, but also careful in these tweets and newsletters. It can be challenging to put your name and face behind these difficult truths, as Canadian publishing is extremely small, and there can be some real consequences to being honest about these issues. But now we agree that it's time for us to approach some of these complex issues in a candid public conversation. And, we wanted to start that so that, we put our mouths where our money where our mouth is. Wow, mixing up.
I'm not putting any money. I'm not putting any money. Just saying.
Okay, fair. Okay. So while we are the co-founders of this collective, we are in no way spokespeople for BIPOC in this industry. And we definitely aren't the first people to be pushing for these conversations and for change. And so we just want to make that clear. We understand and we acknowledge that we are simply four individuals with sometimes very different opinions on how things are happening and what should happen in the future. And, with multiple hopes and, goals in this industry. All of that said, thank you all for joining us as we share some of those opinions and hopes. And yeah, so that's kind of
I just wanted to
else to add.
Also, yeah, I just wanted to add really quickly. So if you're watching and you are logged onto your YouTube account, you can participate in the chat, send us questions and things like that. If you ever see me looking to the side, I'm just paying attention to the chat. I'm not ignoring people, but that's it. That's all I had to say.
Yes, and if I'm looking somewhere up here, it's because I'm looking at my notes. So, Paige, Eamon, anything else do you guys want to add?
I think I'll add one thing. I think every time the four of us have a conversation within the group, we always say this is a safe space. But I just want to say that this is in fact like a safe space for the four of us talking to each other, but we're on the internet. So I just want us to be mindful that, everything we say here, the four of us, it's coming from us as individuals, and we're not speaking for any other group, any other institution. We're speaking as ourselves to each other. And so we will be quite candid, but we're not representing anyone other than ourselves. And yeah, that's it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Eamon. So Eamon actually prepped a doc that we all kind of added thoughts and opinions on. So thank you, Eamon, for that. So, the title, the name, whatever we're calling it, of this event is, New Year, New Industry, ? So we were thinking about the past year and the events and themes that we've experienced and that we've seen come up in discussions. And so we just want to ask each other, what are some of the things, whether it's events or conversations or, specific things in the past year stand out to you and why? And let someone else answer first.
Paige?
I'm going to pick someone. Okay.
Why always me? My gosh. Something that stood out the past year. I feel like over the past year specifically, there's been a lot of promises that have been made. And I've heard from a lot of different people in different conversations and different spaces that I've been in when we were discussing, if we believe that changes are going to be made, because something felt different specifically last year after George Floyd was murdered, and all of these statements started coming out from companies about how they were going to change, and they realized suddenly that there was problems in their company, in the industry in general. They felt like something was different, and they're more hopeful, I feel like. But I feel like as the year's gone on, I specifically have sort of been losing that hope, because it feels like the industry, it wants to change. It realizes it has to, in order to keep up with society, with it's not even out of the goodness out of the industry's heart. It's just because they know they have to keep up and make money. But there's also a reluctance there because they know how difficult it's going to be, and if it's not easy, it's not going to get done, is what I'm at right now. So that's what I've been thinking of and struggling with over the past year.
I'll just jump off that point and add that I think in the last year, the only thing that's been different is that companies, and I'm going to say it, white people, are trying to have these conversations more publicly. And for me, that means nothing, because for a lot of BIPOC, we have the lived experience of dealing with racism, and it has existed prior to everything that's happened last summer for centuries, and it's going to exist. Systemic racism is going to continue to exist because we know who the power lies with. And I think in recent months, it's just become clear that while there's an openness to talk about these things more publicly, there is a lack of nuance in those conversations. There's a lack of action as a result of those conversations. And I think there's a real lack of acknowledgement of what the barriers are. Like every time I see a statement or I have a conversation with a white colleague in the industry, I'm just like, okay, so you're saying I'm sorry, or I acknowledge that there is systemic racism, but you're not saying exactly what that means and what its embodiments are. And so I think until that begins to happen, there's not going to be any real change. And until white people within this industry realize that they have to take a step back, make room at the table, give away some of their power, nothing's going to happen. So all that's changed in the last year. I've become angrier.
So thinking of this question, I think that when we set out to answer this, it was definitely more focused on the industry at large. But what kept coming back to my mind, and this is something that like we've had an event before that we hosted for the collective in regards to burnout. And that to me, the burnout has been the biggest change this year because people have, I mean, to clarify, people have been burning out for a very long time. I think it's a known part of the BIPOC experience within this industry and many other industries. But I think that one, the horrid, racist, horrible events that have happened the last few years and the media attention to them, that plays into the burnout. But a new layer was added this last year, which is the expectation for BIPOC to hold the hands of people that are just entering their journey of education and just education, just they're just learning about what racism really is, because I think a lot of people had this idea of like, oh, I'm not calling someone any names, or I'm not like, doing any racist acts, and people are just now slowly starting to realize that that's not the only facet that racism takes shape in. And so the burnout has been massive this past year. It was always there, but this year it really was at the foreground of everything going on. BIPOC professionals are not only burning out from everything that's happening behind the scenes, they're burning out because they are overworked. They're very often overworked. And then on top of being overworked, they are being expected to educate, to lead D&I initiatives, to do the work, the cleanup work of a mess that they didn't create. So I think that to me has been the most impactful. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up the burnout thing, because that's kind of where my mind was going. And I also think we can't ignore that we've been in a pandemic quarantine situation for over a year now. And I firmly believe that so much of what happened in the summer, like, not to minimize what happened in the summer and the murders of everyone who continues to be murdered by the state in Canada, in the US, elsewhere, but that's not new. And it's happened before. And I do think there's, and I can't quite articulate what the correlation is, but I think there's a correlation between the pandemic and the racial reckoning that happened in the summer. And I think there's been articles and stuff, people talking about that. But I remember having conversations with people about how they were starting to burn out before even that happened, because of the way that the pandemic has shifted the way we work and interact. I think it's brought to the surface a lot of the stuff that we already knew was happening. So the, disparities in like pay, for example, for people, when we're all like coming from our homes, you can see like, your house is much nicer than mine. I wonder why that is, these kinds of things. You can't ignore that. And then there's been a conversation recently between among digital media and social media people who I know from having several friends, one of them here, who work in social media, that was happening before the racial reckoning, that people were starting to get burnt out because there's a lack of understanding on how much work that takes. And I think the reason why I'm bringing it to this conversation, because I've always noticed and found it strange how so many of the people who are in these positions are BIPOC, and they are being tasked by representing these companies that are actively harming them behind the scenes, but you have to be like on social media presenting yourself as the company. And the like clash between what you're experiencing and what's happening, like what you have to project. I think that's something that we really like. I don't work in social, so I don't want to speak on that too much, but I think that's something that's so many people are facing and that is important to kind of look at, and something that I personally have been paying attention to, because it's like, you know, how can you, because that leads to the burnout, right? Because you're like having to compartmentalize who you are. So that was one thing that I thought about a lot. I actually, I don't know if it's disagree, but to me, what happened in the summer and how companies started paying attention isn't so much about them realizing that they need to be better. I think it's more them realizing that they need to be seen being better. And I think that's an important distinction, because I think this is one of the questions coming up. But, you know, when we think about, you know, has anything actually changed? I think there's a lot of things that are being tried that are more to address the appearance of doing something. So people are trying to appear. Actually, I'm going to stop saying people, because it's actually like it's companies. It's like, you know, that like it's corporate entities that are, you know, working through people to try to appear that they're trying to change things. But when you drill down to these changes that they're implementing, it's not actually changing anything in like a fundamental systemic way. And it's instead placing the burden of that change on the people who are being most harmed by the systemic racism in the industry. So that to me, you know, is just something that I wanted to kind of highlight or flag or whatever. Because I mean, and the other thing that I was thinking about is this collective started almost 3 years? No, almost 2 years ago. So it's been, yeah, but we started talking about it way before that.
True, yeah.
Like it started almost 2 years ago, and we were having so many conversations before that. And I personally I can now recognize that I was burning out personally way before we started this collective, and this collective was kind of a way for me to like, you know, channel all that energy, you know, into something useful, because I was feeling and seeing these things and noticing these things in so many different spaces, and we were all experiencing it, and thankfully we had a chance to connect and talk about it. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it's important to point out that what's happening isn't new. It's just been exacerbated by the events of the last year. I mean, you were going to say something and I cut you off. Sorry.
So no, you were talking. I was cutting you off. I'm going to add two things. One of them is, you know, I think there has also been a positive thing for me this year, which is that even with all the emotional labor, all the turmoil, you know, being angry all the time and tired all the time, I think I have been more authentically myself in every single space I occupy than I have ever been in my life. And I think the reason behind that is because I have found a sense of community. I have found people who I not only see myself reflected in their experiences, but who I feel uplifted by. And I think that has been so monumental. And it's been a real change for me in the past year. I haven't had that really throughout my life, aside from my family. And so I think that's been a positive thing this past year. Another thing, I'm just going to share an anecdote that I think speaks a lot to what the past year has meant for a lot of BIPOC. In the last year, I've kind of always been hesitant to have really deeply invested friendships or relationships with white people. And that's because I just fundamentally have felt unsafe in those relationships. And I have felt even with kind white people or informed white people, there has always been that imbalance of power that I have really struggled with. But in this past year, and particularly in the summer, I saw a couple of, you know, white colleagues and friends really speaking out, really, you know, showing me that they were a support system, that they really wanted to learn, that they wanted to be allies. And progressively, in the months that followed, it really turned. Like I began to see that it was really performative allyship, and that while I felt like I could count on them in particular moments, behind the scenes and with other BIPOC, they were doing the exact opposite of what they were saying to me and what they were acknowledging as, you know, their progression in terms of education around systemic racism. And I had to end those friendships and those relationships, which was exhausting. But for me, it was a really healthy change. It allowed me to it was like a microcosm of what I want to do in my life overall, which is to break relationships that are performative, to break away from conversations and relationships that do not allow me to grow and develop and be happy. So I think that to me is a real signifier of what the year has been for a lot of BIPOC.
Yeah, to jump on that, I definitely agree. I've been curating my spaces specifically because we are like we were mentioning, still in a pandemic. So a lot of like our social interactions are happening online. So like specifically online, I've been curating like who I still interact with, who I still follow, because before, like we always said, the industry is so small. So you're sometimes scared to like, because when you like unfollow somebody or you like decide to like soft block them or whatever, it feels like a big deal because you're like, I'm potentially making this person upset with me, and that like burns a bridge that I will never get to like cross again. And there's very limited options in the industry. But at this point, I'm like, if this person, I'm seeing how they're interacting online and how little they're like doing, and like I don't feel supported by them here of all places, I don't want to work with them anyway. So like, why am I scared? Why am I like following out of the sake of just because? So like, I feel like I've also been trying to like just put my energy and my time into the people who I actually feel like are also returning, reciprocating, and we're all like, we have the same goals basically.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I wanted to bring up this point that Aisha made about how many BIPOC are in the damage control sort of roles like social media. And I was thinking about how Eamon mentioned like a seat at the table. There's been a lot of conversations happening about how actually we don't need a seat at the table. We need to break the table because it's the system itself that is the problem, and we won't be able to thrive. Like it doesn't matter if we're in positions of power if the entire system remains the same, because the reason so many people are in these roles is because social media is undervalued and considered an entry role position often. And then that's how BIPOC get into it. And then we're in this position where we are representing the company. Is honestly bizarre sometimes that people trust me, my chaotic self, to be representing a whole ass organization. But like, it's just very interesting. Like I've noticed, like, because I'm so invested in digital like marketing, I've been following a lot of people who run these accounts, and I did notice like a lot of them are BIPOC, and I'm like, I wonder, it's just because it's like entry level and like it leads to the burnout, and because of like, the entire system itself is a mess. Like we have to break the system itself is basically what I was thinking when Eamon mentioned the table.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think it's, you know, as someone who has been given a seat at the table many times in the last couple of years, I think for me it's also sometimes you're told to come to the table for a certain time period, or you're told to come to the table and change everything, or you're told to come to the table and be quiet, or you're told to come to the table and stay there and watch things unfold as they are and have been unfolding for a long, long time. And so I agree. Like, I think, I don't know, I can't speak for all of you, but I can speak for myself that I will never be able to thrive and succeed and have a sustainable career in this industry in spaces that are predominantly white. I feel unsafe in those spaces, and I am not growing or developing in those spaces. And that's the truth for me. And it is for many BIPOC. So
I was just gonna add, yeah, it links so much to that burnout, because it's almost like everyone is just trying to stay afloat, just trying to survive. And so there's no extra mental, physical energy to focus on career growth and development and actually reaching for your dreams and your goals. You're in that constant state of survival mode. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing, to the point that Aisha made of damage control. I personally know quite a few people that either they left the industry altogether or left their jobs because it was the only way to save their mental health. And it's happening more and more. And I feel like that's the layer that I kept seeing this past year, that this was always happening, but now the burnout has completely escalated to the point that people are literally jumping ship just to save themselves. And it's sad. It's horrible.
To the point about the damage control thing, I recently read, God, what is it called? Mediocre, a book about how white men and their mediocrity rule and destroy America. It's been a while, so I can't remember the exact subtitle of it. but there was a part in that book where the author shares an anecdote from someone else, and I wish I remembered who the person who actually said this is, but there's this idea that when a company has like started to nosedive, they bring in women, people of color, minorities of all sorts to fix the thing, because in their eyes it's like, well, it's only like we're only going down. And so when I think about the damage control role and the influx, I don't want to say it that way, because I do think that every single person who's been hired into these higher positions in this past year, and it's mostly been happening in the US, but there's been like a couple of people in Canada who have been brought in these roles that are, from the surface, it looks great. You know, you've got like Black people, people of color in higher positions of power. But it's, to me, I worry, because what that person in that book said was that when the company or the organization or whatever starts to fail, it's like, well, even when we brought the Black woman, she couldn't fix it, and now it's her fault. And it's this weird blamey thing. And when I think about the damage control world, it really kind of, it makes me very anxious, because I want to celebrate these people who've been hired into these roles. But I recognize that just having one of them in each of these companies isn't going to fix it. And what's likely going to happen is that that person is going to be given the task of like fixing it. And even if they are given the power, thank you. Thank you. Even if they are given the power to do this, like they're only one person and they're working against a centuries long industry. Like it's been a long time that this industry's worked the way that it is. And now we're expecting these people to come in and fix it. And it's like, wow. I don't know about that.
But I would just say, I would add on and say, they do not want us to fix it. They want us to take the blame for failing. That's what it is. And I think it's, even adding one such person in this damage control role is just a way for them to protect themselves and put the blame on someone else. It's not, they don't actually fundamentally want to change anything.
Thank you, Bianca, she also mentioned that the phenomenon is called the glass cliff, which is what I was trying to remember. But yes, that is what it is. It's like, you know, when all else has been tried, okay, fine, we'll let you come try to.
I just wanted to very quickly add, and then we can move on to the next topic, to what Eamon was saying about like they want us to like come into these roles and like fail and stuff. I think one important thing to add is that even if you were to give someone the benefit of the doubt and say, no, they're truly doing this, like they have good intentions, it's not enough just to do that if you're not also changing the system. You can't just put a BIPOC person, professional, into a system that's going to bring them down. Like you're just setting them up for failure. So I think that that's an important thing to consider.
Absolutely.
And I think part of it too isn't even like, it's because they want somebody, like, yes, they want to give like a blame. They want to point at somebody and be like, this is the reason it's not working. But also it's because they don't want to learn and do the work themselves and change themselves. So they put somebody there who they assume knows how to fix everything, who will be the solution to fix all of their problems. And then like there's all these extra expectations of like this one person who's been added to this team is going to fix all of their issues. And it's like they're still the one person on that team, and we're all overworked, so we're not going to be able to do it. So like I feel like that's also part of the reason that like leads to more burnout as well, is like these added expectations of like you have to perform your identity for us, and we are allowed to use your identity for our advantage because we don't want to like educate ourselves and change the way we do things around here, you know?
Yep.
Absolutely. Matt. And I think our next question is related to what we're talking about. So I'm just going to add one thing to this, which is that it's the problem is, yes, we need to add more people, but also all of us collectively, whether we're BIPOC, whether we're white, but especially if you're white, need to accept that we ourselves are we are the problem. Like we are. And I mean this in a global sense. You know, we're living in North America. We are contributing to a lot of problems for a lot of other people. And especially in this industry, when we're talking about, you know, diversity and, you know, inclusion, if you as a white person can't recognize that there are ways that you have acted that will have 100% hurt someone, a person of color within your system or in your company or in your, you know, just surroundings, you can't, like, this is not going to go anywhere. And there's this idea that because we're publishing all these books, because we're reading all these books, because we're, you know, we're letting them join, that that's all we need to do. We don't need to examine how we ourselves are complicit in these systems and, you know, there's a lot of other ways that like I am trying really hard right now to educate myself around disability and what it means to be an able person living in a world that primarily privileges me. And so there's a lot of like things like it's just, there's so many things that we have to acknowledge that we ourselves as individuals, like I think that's the important thing. You as a person, as an individual, yes, you are also complicit and you need to figure out what to do about that. And if you can't even start to think about that, which is I think where the block comes for a lot of people, like they can't think of themselves as being complicit in the problem without thinking of themselves as bad people. Because I think like trying to think of yourself as a good or bad person, that's just not helpful for anyone. Like it doesn't matter whether you're good or bad. How do your actions affect other people? How is the position that you occupy, how much of it is because of your privilege? Like I think that's stuff we should all be thinking about all the time.
Yep.
Before we move on to the next question, can I throw out some questions that were being asked in the comments as we were talking? Okay. So the first one was, given everything you know about the industry, if given a second chance, would you pursue publishing again? I feel like I know some people's answers in this group. Eamon, go first.
I absolutely would not. I absolutely, no way would I do that. And I think, I'm someone who left the journalism industry for the same reason, because of the racism. And I think, someone like me who grew up in a really healthy, positive, supportive household where I could be whoever I wanted to be and there would never be a question. It was really hard to then go out into the world and be so extremely judged for my identity, to be held back because of it, to be oppressed because of it. It was so hard to enter the journalism world because of that. And then I entered publishing and it was even worse. So I think I would go back. I would become a teacher, or I would become a grief counselor, or I would get married early and have lots of babies and divorce my husband and just take care of my children. There are so many things I would do, but I would not do this.
Valid.
I don't know. 2020 Marina would have said absolutely not. I would not have entered publishing. 2020 was hard. I would probably do something that I could do from my home on my computer engineer or something. I mean, I feel like it's easy to say when we're outside of other industries, we don't know what the hardships in the other industries are, but publishing is rough. And I think we also feel it a little bit more because it's almost like an echo chamber. Like Canadian publishing is so small. And sometimes it's hard to speak up. It's hard to run away from things and from people and problems because everything is so closely interconnected. Canadian publishing is like, even when you don't personally know someone, you know them. So 2020 Marina would absolutely not want to be here.
Hannah, what's your answer to this?
You're muted.
I kept muting and unmuting myself. I never wanted to join publishing. I tell this story and people always laugh. I literally did not intend to join publishing because of this, because I knew from a long time ago, from doing research, from being online, that this is the bad place. And so I accidentally joined publishing because I was looking for a job and this was a way to pay the bills. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll make some money. And then if I get another job, I'll move on. So I've always had one foot out the door. The thing for me is I come from the arts world. So I used to work in some theater companies, arts, culture, that's where the world that I come from. And that's also the bad place. So to me, it's like now I'm at the place where it doesn't matter where, I don't know. I don't know if I can answer the question, because to me, it's like, this is going to be something that I have to deal with wherever I go, because of the kind of person that I am. I can't exist in a place that has so many systemic issues without addressing these systemic issues in some way. And it's caused me a lot of grief. I'm not kidding when I tell you that I have lost out on opportunities for growth in my career because my beliefs in the ways that I want to address the systemic issues are barriers for me. But that's going to be a barrier for me wherever. So I don't know. I don't know if I can answer this question properly.
I mean,
Because
I think that was an answer. I think that was a fair
yeah, that was
answer.
a great answer.
okay.
Paige, what about you? Would you, you know, would you?
Um,
I mean, I think many of us, even the ones that say that they did not absolutely would not enter it, I think we still want to stay here because we know what we can provide. But Paige, would you?
Yeah, like, okay, I'm in that sort of situation where like I was the sort of person where like I knew I wanted to work in publishing since I was like 14, and that was it for me. Like it's straight up my goal. And like at this point, I'm stubborn, so I'm not leaving because we're not changing things now that I'm sorry, like it's gonna happen now. Like I'm like that point in like my career. It's like I feel like I always would have done it because like Hannah was saying, like I would always want to work in something creative because I am a creative person. And in every creative industry, I would have faced similar issues. So I would have been in the same position if I decided to get into like film and like doing social on that side of things. It would have been the same situation. So like, yeah, I would still do it because I'm a stubborn bitch. That's basically.
I do so much out of spite. That's
Mhm.
literally
Yes.
like yeah. And so I think there's a lot of love, but also there's a lot of spite.
Hannah, haram. God is watching.
That's between me and God. We'll deal with it. And you know, I can't be perfect all the time. I should try, but I don't even. I think the next question was actually kind of, we covered it a little bit. It was about what changes have you seen, or what changes? There's a question.
This is sort of similar to that. Like over the past year, like given everything that's happened, have we seen growth in like our support as a?
Yeah, that is kind of the question.
It's very similar. Yeah.
Okay, let's answer this one.
Yep.
Who wants to go first?
I feel like people think we're like the easy fix is what I'm thinking. I feel like a lot of people just point to us and expect us to like have the answer / we're going to be the reason the industry corrects itself. And we always have, I feel like we've spent a lot of time being like, we're not here to fix the industry. We're here to provide support and do what we can for the BIPOC within the industry because we know what it's like to be here and feel like this industry is not made to support us. And we just want to make sure like we avoid as many people who are so fucking talented from leaving because that is a huge issue. So like that's one thing I've noticed is like people point to us a lot more and like they're giving us like financial support and stuff, which is like great because it means we can do things on a bigger scale. But I'm always concerned that they think we're the be all end all now. And I'm like, that is not, none of us think we can fix the industry. Like we're just doing our best right now.
I think it's also, we are growing and learning, and I don't think a single one of us here would say that, you know, we know everything and we're fully evolved and we are pioneers of change. I think we would all say we're really tired, fucked up, chaotic bitches. And I think that honestly is who we are. And I think for me personally, I'm a extreme level rebel. Like I'm at a spectrum where these three lovely women have to rein me in constantly. So I think the expectation that the four of us are professionals who are deeply invested in change is accurate. But behind that, you know, we're people who are just figuring it out. And we are absolutely not here to serve white publishing. We are for BIPOC, a community for BIPOC, and just for people who don't even want to engage about the ways that we can help the white people in publishing. So that's my bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and again, this is something that we always bring up in events or in conversations that we have when, especially more public facing situations such as like this live show. The collective came about as a way to provide a space and a sense of community to the people, to the BIPOC professionals in the industry. The collective was not created to fix the industry. It was created to provide shelter, to provide community, to provide, now as we grow and we see more of what people ask for and what they need, it's become a space for mentorship, for peer-to-peer mentorship as well. So it's been a space for growth. And so I always like to remind people on the outside that BIPOC of Pub was created for BIPOC. It was created to to basically just provide that safety to people that don't have it in their spaces. There's a lot of BIPOC folks in the collective that sometimes, many times, they are the only one in the rooms that they occupy. And so it's an isolating, it's a mind fucking experience, if I can put it that way, to be the only one and to be shouting in your own mind. And, like, how could this be possibly happening right in front of my eyes? How can these people open their mouths and say all of this and not have an ounce of guilt? Like, these BIPOC professionals are stuck in these rooms alone. And so that's where the collective came from. It was to provide a space where people could come together, and even just as simple as saying, I'm not going crazy. I'm not imagining this. They are doing this to me. They are doing this to us. And just to bring that sense of, community, and just to provide that space, that's where we came from. And so whenever people reach out to us or tag us in things and just bring up the name of the collective in conversations about equity and inclusivity and things like that, one thing that I ask is always remember, like, we're not here to educate the people on the outside, to educate white publishing. We are here for BIPOC professionals. And so that's always something that I like to make very clear. We're not here to fix the industry. That's not what we're here for. If you're on this live show right now, making notes, waiting for the answers, they're not going to be here. They're not here. Yeah, that's all that I had to say.
One thing that I have noticed, and I'm going to use community in two different senses. I think there's the community that we're building. I think those people in that community know what we're about. But there's the larger publishing community that's around us that I feel like that's where we keep having to explain. And I can't count the number of times where, whether it's through a tweet, a conversation in person, an email, I don't even, like, there's so many times, and most often by white people, where it's like, what are you doing to fix this? Or how can you help me learn about this? And I remember there was a tweet once, and I was like, we're not going to educate you. Like, don't, like, So I think there's, like, because there's not a lot of visible, I'm going to say visible, because I think there are a lot of people who are trying to do this work in, like, various companies and places, but there's not a lot of visibility around that work sometimes. So because we are so visible in that way, so many people put so much of what they want and what they expect to change in the industry on us. And sometimes that comes from other BIPOC, to be honest. And I understand why there's that drive and there's that hope, but it was never like, we don't have the power to actually change the systemic issues. We can talk about it, we can bring light to it, and we will keep doing that. That's important for us. And the other important thing for us is to provide the community where we can validate that, yes, this is fucked up, that we're in this situation. But the larger publishing community so often looks at us as solutions for all of these issues, again, as opposed to looking within themselves and being like, how can I as a person? Because I think if all of us started asking that question, like, how can I as an individual in this whatever space you occupy, what can I do to change things, even in a small way? I wish more people would ask that question and act on that, as opposed to looking for who else is trying to do something, because there's so many different issues, and we're tackling this one specific thing, like around BIPOC representation and being a community. But there's, like, again, the ableism thing, there's like how many editors who identify as non-binary do you know? I know one person. So, there's so many other issues, and we need more people to actually try to do that work in their various communities. And we also need people who are more privileged to just ask themselves, what can I personally do? And it needs to go beyond, here's some money. Because here's some money, that's like, again, give me all your money, I don't care. But like, that's not going to absolve you of, the privilege that you have. It's like, you got to do more. And I also find it really frustrating when people are like, have conversations with us, I'm going to speak for myself, actually. When people of privilege in various ways speak to me and tell me what great a job we're doing with the collective, whatever. But I know that they have colleagues that they work with very closely who are not supported, who don't feel like they're being seen by those very people. Yep. And I know that because I've had conversations with both this person in power who's talking to me right now and telling me what a great person I am. And like, I know that, your assistant doesn't feel like you support, it's mind-boggling to me because I'm like, I feel uncomfortable accepting this this compliment from you because I know that I don't think you mean it, because if you meant it, maybe you would try to help your colleagues in your own space. We're not, you don't need to help me, but maybe help you.
I'm gonna just add on to that, every time we get an email or a DM or someone talks to us, a publishing professional individually as individuals, they should come to those conversations knowing we know all the tea. We know all the tea and we get all the tea. And so I think it's a huge thing for us to even be polite to you when we respond, knowing the things that we know about you. So you're welcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one, to clarify when Hannah was like, give us all our money, to clarify to everyone for legal purposes, 100% of all the money that we collect, that we receive from from BIPOC of Pub, 100% of that money goes right back into programming, just to clarify. But I was gonna say exactly to the point that Hannah was saying, we're very grateful for all the donations, and a lot of there's been people as well, like sometimes the donation is not necessarily money, sometimes it's space, sometimes it's resources, and we're very, very grateful for sure. But before you open your wallet and make a donation to BIPOC of Pub, I want you to look at the space around yourself and question yourself, how can I support, elevate, and just make a more welcoming space for the BIPOC around me first? What are you doing for the people around you first? Like, giving away money is easy. It's very easy.
If you have it, yeah. If you have
it, it's
very easy.
But the problem with giving away money is that once you give the money, you have that sense of relief, like you've done your part, and that money is never enough. Money is nothing.
It's also, you never, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, I have not seen a single publishing person who says they're committed to change actually spell out what the existing issues are. No one has said, these are the problems. These are the ways that we are a racist, fundamentally racist industry and society. So just going to say that.
Thank you for clarifying that point, Marina. I think it's because it's happened in in-person conversations where someone's like, would this fix the problem? It's like, well, thank you. We'll take the donation, but also maybe consider what else you could do to address some of these issues. So one of the next questions that we have on here is, sorry, we've covered a lot of it through the conversation, so I'm just trying to make sure that what else have we not covered.
In the meantime, I want Eamon to answer this one question that I saw in the chat, because we've had this discussion before, and I feel like Hannah and Eamon specifically have been bringing this up more often.
I know exactly what you're gonna.
You know what it is? This one. Have you ever thought of creating a BIPOC publishing company? Do you think that would address some of the needs of change in the industry?
I'm not going to tell you my secrets.
Oh, secrets now. Is that what it is? But I'll just say, we have discussed it because, obviously we feel most comfortable, with each other and with the community we've created with other people. So, obviously I feel like, yeah, that would be, the place for all of us to thrive. But also, it's a lot of money to start a company. Just starting this collective was a lot for us legally to, understand, how to do everything. So I feel like part of it also comes with when publishing houses create a specific imprint, like a One World that specifically publishes certain books, it almost feels like we should be changing all of the companies themselves. There's only so much one company / one imprint can do, and it needs to change everywhere. And it feels like they're just pushing the problem. So for us personally, we would thrive more in a situation if we were I don't know if us specifically together chaotic, but a BIPOC publishing company, I do feel individually we could change some things, but it wouldn't be the answer overall.
I think it's also
Hannah
really
has
a lot
a
more.
serious face right now.
I think it's also more
thinking.
complicated and more nuanced than just creating spaces for ourselves, publishing that work, working with people you agree with, doing all of that institutionally, having an institution built on the values that you value. I see the importance of that. But it doesn't, like, working in your own silo does not, for me, change the fact that there will be an amen at some publishing company or some literary agency who is struggling mentally, physically, who is like struggling every single day to make it to the next day. So I think it, as you said, I would absolutely love to do that. And I would love to cut the crap and not work with people who infuriate me. But I also recognize that doesn't end the issue.
And I would say as well, like, at the end of the day, one company is one company. You would still have to work with others. Like, a company can't survive siloed in an industry. You have to engage with other stakeholders and things like that. So it would be great, but it wouldn't be a solution.
Hannah?
Yeah, that's where I come to as well. And the nature of power and privilege works so that even if you do create your own spaces, especially if we're like thinking about this as publishing as a business and everyone's got to make money, and there are those places, there are those publishing houses and those places where they are built on those values, but I know that they struggle so much to compete in this business. And if that is the most important thing for you, and I see the value in that, as Eamon said, it's important, and those people are probably happier than the ones who are stuck in the other the bigger houses or whatever. But the nature of power and privilege is that there's only so much you can do in those spaces where you're locked away from. Sorry, I'm not articulating myself very well, but I just think that it's not going to solve the systemic larger issue. And I think that while those spaces should exist, and I'm glad that they're there, we also some people need to address the systemic issues that are within the other places too, because those issues negatively impact the houses that are built on, values that value BIPOC and marginalized people. So
it's also impossible with the way that the Canadian publishing industry works and the monopolies that are forming within the industry, and the greed for power and consolidation of power. It's impossible to thrive and survive in kind of creating our own grassroots spaces. So yeah.
Thank you. And okay, so we have a couple of questions that we still need to get through, but I don't think we'll be able to go through all of them. Yeah. One thing that I think we should kind of touch on a little bit is something that we've talked about amongst ourselves, which is the question of how do we think our specific identities and privilege has allowed us to be the co-founders of this space. Because as we mentioned at the top of the event, we are not the first people to push for this change, and we won't be the last. And we're not even the ones who are doing the most effective work. And there are a lot of invisible people doing this work, but we've now been thrust into this like very visible position. And I think we should address that a little bit. Yeah. Does anybody want to go? I can go.
Yeah, let's keep it quick. Hannah, do you want to go first?
Sure. I am someone who is, I am Black, but I'm very light skinned. And I have often been told that I'm not Black. So, that's that whole thing. And I'm very good at not assimilating, but I think people just kind of assume I'm good at compartmentalization, so I can exist in these like very toxic spaces and like save my mental health and make my way forward in these spaces. So it makes it easier for me to exist in that way. Easier is not the right term, but I think all of that is important to acknowledge, because I think if I wasn't able to compartmentalize so well and deal with certain people in certain spaces, that has allowed me to grow my career in ways that I don't think I would have been able to if I probably was darker skinned. Like, let's just be very honest about that. There's a reason why we all look the way we do in this collective, in the co-founders of the collective. So I think that's a big part for me. and I'm a cis woman. That's also a big part. So there's all of these ways that I personally think that I am benefiting from privilege.
Paige, Marina.
Please ignore my dog barking in the background. But
Bring her in.
She's busy, barking at someone. But for me, I think most primarily, I think about the fact that for me, it's also a privilege of my class, because I was able to take internships, specifically to the role I'm in right now. If I wasn't supported by my family, I would not have been able to take the internship I took, which paid $100 a week. So I always think about that, and the fact that I'm also light-skinned, that I'm also biracial, so I have a proximity to whiteness that I try to use in order to push for change, because people tend to look at me and they won't think I'm being combative, even though I am. I feel like there's that, how white people listen to other white people. I feel like because I have that proximity, I try to use it because I know I can push a little further sometimes without receiving some consequences that somebody else might face. So for me, I always acknowledge my privilege. I always acknowledge that if I didn't look the way I did, half of the stuff that I've done, like posting videos about how I feel, would not have gone over well. And I try to use what privilege I do have in order to make things better. And I'm always ready to step back, because I know some conversations are not for me because I am privileged. So I always try to acknowledge my space and try not to take up too much space in these conversations, because I should not be the sole person, the sole face, because white people would want that. They would want that to be what happens,
Yeah. I would say exactly the same that Paige said, because it's so easy to blend into those spaces and just just, I feel like the privilege, sorry, that I carry, it's something that I strive to remind myself every single day. And it always comes to my mind as well. It's because there's always, I feel like there is people that think that you're just trying to be oppressed. It's people want to be oppressed, just to take up a space. But I think it's exactly the opposite. It's reminding myself that I carry a lot of privilege on my shoulders. The one thing, just not to go too further because Paige covered that side, but I do, one thing that I pay attention to is the immigrant experience. Out of the four of us, no, Paige also. Paige?
I think we're all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I moved to Canada with my family about 15 years ago. So I don't have the adult immigration experience, but I do have the immigration experience, and what that does to a person, what it does to a family, the challenges that come with that. When I got here, I did not speak English, and how that affects someone in terms of your mental health wise and things like that. I think that we meet a lot of BIPOC in the industry that move to Canada from a different country, and they have very different experiences from people that are second generation Canadians and things like that. So I think that that's another one that I try to keep my eyes on, because I think it's something that we need to pay attention to as well. It's a valid experience.
I'll be quick. I think a lot of what's been said applies to me, but I think my greatest privilege is growing up in the family that I did. I think, as I said earlier, I can be whoever I want, and I can say whatever I want, and I can fight whatever fight I want. And I know that nothing in my personal life on that end will change. There are no pressures on that end that make it hard for me to fight the other fights. So I think having that security and safety in my family life is my greatest privilege.
That was the most wholesome answer.
I know.
You make me want to cry all the time. Another thing to make us cry, I'm going through the comments since we do have to start wrapping things up.
Yes.
Chantal left this really nice message about the safety. This is exactly what I want to hear, because my number one priority is making sure we have safe spaces for everybody. The highlight of BIPOC of Pub for me is being able to meet everybody that I might not have had the chance to meet if we did not start this. So
that has been the biggest joy. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Which sort of answers something Aisha asked was
yes,
do we feel more connected? And I'm 100%.
Absolutely.
So that actually leads to, I'm going to combine a couple of the questions that we haven't gotten a chance to touch on yet into one, and that is, we mentioned at the top of this that, we're coming into this as individuals. So what are some hopes, challenges, and things you like seeing in the industry as like each of us as individuals? And you can order that however you want.
Damn, putting me on the spot.
I feel like hopes, I'll say immediately, like every time I get to talk to somebody who's a potential, like a hopeful for the industry, whether they like reach out through LinkedIn or my DMs, or it's like an intern that's joined my like company, getting to talk to the younger generation and like seeing like how brave and smart and just like they're just so much cooler than all of us. And I feel like that's my source of hope, is knowing like people are coming in, but also that we're fighting to make the change for them so that they can stay, and that it's easier for them than it was for us. So like that's my hope. The other things I have to think about, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that, like my hope for me personally and for BIPOC of Pub, as much as we are a community for BIPOC, I hope that the little bit of space that we take up online and, in the industry, and the little voice that we do have, I hope that we can make enough noise to make enough people and companies, at the very least, feel guilty, and start doing more. I love making people feel guilty. That's a hobby for sure. I'll leave it at that.
I can round up all three of mine really quickly. I think in terms of hopes, my hope is that, I say this all the time, that it's burnt down to the ground and rebuilt the right way. That's my hope. Challenges are, for me, I'm a really patient person in my personal life, but I lack patience with people who are stupid and have privilege and use their power for evil rather than good, simply put. So I think my challenge is having patience with those people. And, I think I say this to the three women in this live stream all the time, that I was a really nice person when I joined this industry. And I think day by day, I'm becoming a monster. And I think just reining that in. And then what was the last thing, Hannah?
Like changes that you are seeing that you like.
Yeah. So I would say resilience. Resilience is something I'm seeing, and we shouldn't have to be resilient, but I've seen closely the resilience in the BIPOC who work in the industry, the authors who continue to write stories and hope that they get out there. And so I think that is something, and I think just working and talking to and having intimate relationships with all three of you, I think is such a valuable thing, and it has allowed me to grow as a human being, and it has allowed me to survive the last year. So thank you.
Speaking to the resilience thing that you just said, like the changes that I've seen, I do feel like people, because we've created like this community here, but like also within like companies, people have like started like talking to each other more, like gathering together, and there's like informal communities there now. Darcy has opinions about this.
Does she see me? Because I know she hates me. Can she see? Okay, so it's not me.
But I feel like because of these communities, people feel like they might be like they can be a little bit braver, but also like if they're experiencing something, they can go back and like discuss it. So it's not like we're siloed, that we're experiencing it feeling like solo and like lonely. So I feel like that is a change that I've seen that makes me feel hopeful, because I feel like we've been able to like push and have a little bit more conversations, like specifically personally where I work, because we know we have a community that like supports us and that we're not alone when we're trying to make some changes.
Yep.
And challenges, the whole publishing industry is a challenge. But
publishing. I just want to say, we keep saying publishing, and I want to make that distinction clear. They're BIPOC who are doing great work. I would say white publishing.
Yeah, correct. The institution of publishing is the problem.
Yeah.
Just before we wrap up, I just wanted to add, I mentioned in the chat below, if you're watching, we didn't have time to cover everything because we talk so much. We love to talk, especially between the four of us. So any questions that we see on the chat that maybe we didn't have time to cover, we're going to try to tackle those later on Twitter. So be on the lookout for that.
Hannah, you didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. The challenges that I face, I think, are largely created because of my personality and who I am. Well, I think I have like the spirit of a white man, And sometimes it's a shock to me when it's like, oh, wait, what? I can't do whatever the fuck I want to do because I'm not a white man. So that's a big challenge for me. It's like, I got to deal with that. It's like there was a Mindy Kaling episode, I think, of that exact same topic. And I remember watching that and being like, oh my God, it's me. So that is a challenge because I mentioned earlier that we can't do everything, but my first instinct whenever I see a problem is like, I want to fix it. And I've had to kind of like reel myself back because like I can't, that's not one physically possible. Also, it's not my place sometimes to try to fix all of these things. And when it comes to my friends, sometimes I do ask you guys, do you want me to give you advice or do you want me to like just support you? Because sometimes what I need to do is just support people. So that's one challenge. And this is a very niche challenge. I work, as I mentioned, in foreign rights. And it seems like the conversations that we're all having about systemic racism in the industry have now started popping up in a more significant way in the larger publishing industry outside of English-speaking industry. So a challenge that I'm facing is trying to not project my like North American, Canadian expectations of how things should be into these other industries, while also acknowledging that there is a lot wrong in publishing all over the world, but I don't know the answers. And again, as I mentioned, I always want to fix things, but this is something that's been coming up a lot in my personal, in my work. So just figuring out how to navigate those conversations and that is going to be interesting. Hopes and dreams. Wow, sorry, I got distracted by the question.
No, this is just for us to end on. So please continue, and then this is
yes. Okay, so I'll answer the things that are happening that I like. So while I don't think that any one BIPOC getting promoted or getting a new job or anything like that is going to change systemic issues, it brings me great joy when I see things like a BIPOC agent selling a book by a BIPOC author to a BIPOC editor. And I'm like, oh my God, I love it. And it just like makes my heart sing. There's so few of us, so it doesn't happen very often. But when it does, I'm just like so thrilled. And it makes me so happy because of the gatekeeping nature of this industry. It's like the whole idea is like, you can't have diverse books unless the white people do it. It's like, well, actually. So that's something that makes me very happy. And then in terms of changes and things that I want to do and see, well, this actually leads straight into this question here. I love what we're doing with the mentorship project. And I feel very strongly about so much of the programming that we're doing because I think while it does address it, while it doesn't fix the systemic issues, I think having an awareness of these things as you're entering into this industry is useful. And that's such a big part of what this community is like acknowledging, yes, this is a messed up industry. And so sharing that knowledge is something that that's kind of what I want to do and focus on, is like being very honest about the truth of working in this industry. So to update people on the mentorship program, we're still accepting applications. The applications close on April 5th, thank you. And so we'll be taking some time, like I think a couple of weeks or so, to review everything. But everyone who applies, you will hear from us. Everybody will hear from us. So just know that. I think that's all the update that I can give at this point.
Okay, we're gonna let everyone go because we're over the time. But I just want to end off saying thank you so much to everyone who has watched the live stream now or will watch the live stream later. A shout out to all the BIPOC in the industry who are taking up space here. We know it's hard. We see you. We feel you. Come talk to us. And to the white people in publishing, as always, try to do a little bit better because we're fucking tired. Thank you.
Yeah, those are the
perfect words to end up better. Fucking tired.
No, yeah, and I was gonna add as well, we not only see you, but literally every day, every conversation that we have between the four of us as we're working on programming, mentorship, like we are inspired by you literally every day. We learn from you every day, people in the collective, from conversations we have, from successes that we see you, like things that you accomplish. Like, we are inspired by you and every single one of you every single day. So thank you for opening up to us, for joining the collective, for sharing so much of your time and energy to help other people in the collective grow. That speaks so highly of the mentorship program as well. Like, so many amazing mentors that come and join us to help make this possible. So just want to say thank you to BIPOC professionals out there. Thank you.
I
We
will
love
say this is honestly so much of why I'm still in the industry is working with the
It's
three
you.
of you and getting to meet everyone who we've met through this work. And so many, I mean, all the love to the mentors that join us to make the mentorship project possible. But I can't lie, I love so many, like the mentees that we get to work with are so amazing. And I just want to stay in this industry long enough to see them join and see what they'll do in this industry, because every single one of you, I remember when we were doing the first round, is like, I want to be this person's mentor, even though I don't have like the capacity to, because you're all so cool and amazing. And I'm excited to work with you and see you just join the industry, hopefully, and thrive and make it. And yeah. Wow, I don't get very emotional often, but here we go.
Okay, let's sign off. Love you. Bye.
Well, okay. I guess
check
the
Twitter.
end of our live. Check Twitter for any of the questions that we may not have gotten to in the comments. That's where we'll be able to answer them. And maybe we'll do this again because this went okay, I think. It was good.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.